Sam Green arrived in Meadowbrook like a whisper, settling into the quiet suburban rhythm with an almost preternatural ease. Approaching his late 30s, early 40s, Sam possessed a calm demeanor that was often mistaken for shyness. His dark eyes, intelligent and observant, usually held a thoughtful, distant quality, but could light up with a genuinely warm smile that softened the subtle intensity of his gaze. Meadowbrook, a neighborhood of manicured lawns and predictable routines, was predominantly white and boasted a quiet, almost sleepy charm. It was the kind of place where new faces, especially those that didn't quite fit the existing mold, were scrutinized with a polite but persistent curiosity. Sam wasn't looking to make waves. He was actively seeking the quietude, the very anonymity this town seemed to promise. His new home, a modest, well-kept ranch house on Willow Creek Lane, quickly became his sanctuary. He'd meticulously tend to his small garden, coaxing vibrant life from the rich soil, a stark contrast to the complex world he had once inhabited. Evenings were spent in the gentle glow of a reading lamp, his hands often cradling thick tomes on advanced cybersecurity, complex algorithms, or the surprisingly intricate history of local architectural styles. He attended the occasional neighborhood association meetings, always polite, always attentive, offering thoughtful, concise contributions when prompted, but never drawing undue attention to himself. He was the epitome of a good neighbor, respectful, responsible, and utterly unobtrusive. His mornings began before dawn, with a silent, methodical run through the winding streets, his footsteps barely disturbing the dew on the sidewalks. Sometimes he'd pause, spotting an elderly neighbor struggling with a fallen branch or a wayward newspaper, and without a word, he'd offer a quick, efficient hand, vanishing before a thank you could be fully articulated. He simply existed, a quiet force of positive energy, blending into the background. One sweltering Tuesday afternoon, the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer, Sam was engrossed in trimming a particularly unruly rose bush that threatened to spill onto his neighbor's neatly edged lawn. He moved with a focused precision, each snip of his shears deliberate, almost meditative. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Mrs. Miller, his elderly next-door neighbor, struggling. Her diminutive frame was bent under the weight of a bursting grocery bag, and as she navigated the short distance from her car to her front door, the bottom of the paper bag gave way. A cascade of ripe oranges tumbled out, rolling across her driveway and onto the street. Mrs. Miller gasped, her frail hands fluttering helplessly, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. The few cars passing by either didn't notice or simply drove on, indifferent. Sam's shears dropped to the grass with a soft clatter. His first, almost ingrained reaction was to assess the situation, the potential danger of the oranges rolling into the street, Mrs. Miller's clear distress. His years of training had taught him to react swiftly, efficiently, and without drawing unnecessary attention. He could have continued pruning, pretended not to notice. He was a new resident. It wasn't his immediate problem. But the sight of Mrs. Miller's trembling hands and the helpless despair on her face triggered a deeper, more fundamental instinct than self-preservation. It was empathy, pure and unadulterated. Without a moment's hesitation, Sam quickly, yet smoothly moved. He covered the distance to Mrs. Miller's driveway in a few long strides. He didn't speak, didn't offer a dramatic exclamation of concern. Instead, he simply knelt, his movements fluid and efficient, gathering the scattered oranges with surprising speed. He scooped them up, one by one, his fingers gentle, and quickly found a spare reusable bag in Mrs. Miller's still-open trunk. He carefully transferred the rest of her groceries, ensuring nothing else would spill, then took the bag from her hand. "Let me get that for you, Mrs. Miller," he murmured, his voice a low, reassuring rumble, offering the first words he'd spoken to her beyond a polite hello. Before she could protest or even fully comprehend what was happening, he was already carrying the heavy bag up her steps and into her kitchen. He placed it gently on her counter, offered a small, reassuring smile, and quietly slipped out, returning to his rose bush as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Mrs. Miller, still slightly dazed, could only offer a whispered, "Thank you, dear," to his retreating back. This unassuming act of spontaneous kindness, devoid of any fanfare or expectation of reward, was Sam's quintessential save the cat moment. It painted a clear, compelling picture of his innate goodness, his quiet strength, and his profound capacity for compassion, solidifying his character as someone truly worthy of the reader's immediate empathy and respect. Beneath the meticulously crafted facade of a quiet, unassuming suburbanite, Samuel Green carried the subtle imprints of an extraordinary past. These weren't scars, not in the traditional sense, but deeply ingrained habits and almost involuntary reflexes that whispered of a life far more complex than rose gardens and neighborhood meetings. On his left wrist, barely visible beneath the cuff of his long-sleeved shirts, he wore a sleek, almost futuristic digital watch. It wasn't a common brand. Its minimalist design concealed an array of hidden functions. Sometimes, without conscious thought, Sam would glance at it, and for a split second, the small screen would display a flicker of cryptic characters or a series of pulsing lights that suggested more than just timekeeping. It was a piece of bespoke technology, a relic from a world where information was power and security was paramount. His home, while outwardly modest, held its own subtle clues. On a sturdy oak bookshelf in his study, nestled between classic novels and gardening guides, were several unassuming yet highly specialized technical manuals. Their titles, like Quantum Cryptography for Distributed Networks or Advanced Spectrum Analysis Protocols, hinted at a profound knowledge beyond typical IT consulting. Tucked into one of these dense volumes was a small, intricately designed metal pin, polished smooth by countless touches. It bore no recognizable insignia, no flag or emblem, just a stylized, almost abstract symbol of interconnected nodes. It was a seed of mystery, a silent testament to affiliations and achievements he never spoke of. When Sam performed even the most mundane tasks requiring precision, assembling a new piece of furniture, rewiring a light fixture, or even meticulously cleaning a delicate antique, his hands moved with an almost startling efficiency and exactitude. His fingers, long and agile, would manipulate tools with the practiced grace of a surgeon, each movement economical, deliberate, and flawless. It was the kind of dexterity honed by years of working with microscopic components, diffusing complex devices, or assembling highly sensitive equipment under immense pressure. He would often unconsciously scan his environment, his eyes sweeping across a room, lingering for a fraction of a second on exits, potential choke points, or any misplaced object, as if perpetually conducting an unseen threat assessment. This was the ingrained vigilance of someone who had operated in high-stakes environments, where every detail mattered. Occasionally, late at night, a soft, almost imperceptible chime would emanate from his study. Sam would answer, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone, filled with technical jargon and coded phrases that would be utterly incomprehensible to an outsider. Secure tunnel, packet injection, zero-day vulnerability. These calls were always brief, his responses succinct, and the logs quickly wiped from his phone. These subtle, disconnected details woven into his everyday life, the unique watch, the specialized books, the hidden pin, the almost surgical precision of his hands, the unconscious vigilance, and the cryptic late-night calls, were the seeds of mystery quietly sown throughout his new, tranquil existence. They painted a compelling, albeit incomplete, portrait of a man far more complex, far more capable, than the unassuming new neighbor he presented to Meadowbrook. He was a legend, hiding in plain sight, a formidable past carefully masked beneath a veneer of ordinary suburban life. The morning sunshine, usually a gentle warmth, felt harsh and intrusive as it streamed through Brenda Hayes's kitchen window. Brenda, a woman whose life revolved around the meticulously ordered universe of Meadowbrook, was already on edge. As the self-appointed and perpetually vigilant president of the Meadowbrook Neighborhood Association, she saw herself as the guardian of its pristine tranquility, a bulwark against anything that threatened its suburban idol. And Samuel Green, the new black man who had moved in just 3 weeks ago, was, in her eyes, a potential threat. Her late husband, a stern retired accountant, had instilled in her a deep-seated suspicion of anything out of place, a trait that, combined with her own biases and insecurities, had blossomed into a full-blown paranoia. Sam's quiet demeanor wasn't a sign of politeness to Brenda. It was a carefully constructed veil, hiding who knew what nefarious intentions. Brenda's daily patrols on her bright red cruiser bicycle were legendary in the neighborhood, though not always for the right reasons. She'd pedal slowly, her keen eyes missing nothing: an overflowing recycling bin, a lawn that was a day overdue for mowing, a child's forgotten toy left on a driveway. But ever since Sam moved in, her focus had narrowed. She'd noted his early morning runs, far too early for any normal person. She'd seen him tinkering with what looked like complicated electronic equipment in his garage, just a regular laptop and a network switch, but to Brenda it screamed suspicious activity. She'd tried to engage him, of course, feigning neighborly interest. "So, Mr. Green," she'd begun one afternoon, leaning conspiratorially over his freshly pruned rose bushes, "what brings you to our lovely Meadowbrook? And what exactly do you do for work? Seems rather independent." Sam had responded with polite if vague answers, explaining he was a consultant. His evasiveness, as Brenda perceived it, only cemented her suspicions. She began whispering to other neighbors, painting Sam as the mysterious new man, subtly fanning the flames of suspicion and unease. "He's just too quiet," she'd declare with a knowing nod. "And those gadgets he plays with? Not normal, I tell you." Brenda's mounting anxiety reached a fever pitch one sweltering Tuesday afternoon. Sam, completely oblivious to the brewing storm, was absorbed in a task he'd been putting off: upgrading his home Wi-Fi. His existing network, while functional, lacked the robust security protocols he considered essential. He wanted to build a more secure, highly encrypted network, a personal fortress against any digital intrusion. This wasn't a simple plug-and-play operation. It involved carefully opening his router's casing, soldering a few custom wires to integrate a specialized hardware security module, and meticulously connecting a small omnidirectional antenna he'd custom-built to his external power supply for enhanced signal and redundancy. He also had a few handheld network analyzers blinking with complex data streams, devices that looked straight out of a spy movie to an untrained eye. He was focused, humming softly, a faint sheen of sweat on his brow as he carefully positioned the antenna on the edge of his back porch roof, just out of sight of most passers-by. Brenda, meanwhile, was on her afternoon patrol, pedaling her red bicycle down Willow Creek Lane. She spotted Sam perched precariously on a stepladder on his porch roof, tiny wires glinting in the sun. Her eyes, magnified by her prescription sunglasses, immediately zeroed in on the unusual antenna and the blinking lights of his testing equipment. Her mind, already primed by suspicion, raced. "He's hacking us!" she shrieked internally, her blood turning cold. "He's putting up a listening device. He's stealing our internet, our data, our very lives." Paranoia consumed her, twisting mundane objects into instruments of shadowy espionage. She quickly ducked behind a thick azalea bush in a neighbor's yard, pulling out her smartphone. Her hands trembled as she zoomed in, snapping multiple blurry photos of Sam, her face contorted in a mask of fear and righteous fury. The sheer audacity of what she imagined Sam was doing, combined with her mounting fear, propelled Brenda from her hiding spot. She burst out from behind the azaleas, pedaling furiously down the street, her bright red bicycle a blur of indignant motion. She screeched to a halt at the edge of Sam's lawn, nearly toppling over. "You!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at Sam, who looked down from his ladder, startled. "I know what you're doing. I've been watching you, Mr. Green. You're hacking our Wi-Fi. You're spying on us. This is Meadowbrook, not some den of thieves." Her voice, shrill and piercing, sliced through the afternoon quiet. "I'm calling the police. You won't get away with this, you hear me?" Without waiting for a response, Brenda fumbled with her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed 911. Her voice, once she connected, was a theatrical blend of panic and self-importance. "Yes, hello. I need police at 142 Willow Creek Lane, Meadowbrook. There's a suspicious individual, a black man, on his roof. He's installing some kind of device, hacking our neighborhood's internet. He looks dangerous. I think he's a spy." She cast a triumphant, venomous glare at Sam, who had slowly descended from his ladder, his expression unreadable. This public accusation, This frantic, racially charged phone call to emergency services was the point of no return. The tranquil peace Sam had sought, the anonymity he had carefully cultivated, had just been irrevocably shattered. He could no longer simply exist. He was now a target. His past, no matter how carefully buried, on the verge of being unearthed by the very forces he had tried to escape. The quiet before the storm had ended. The storm was here. The shrill, escalating wail of approaching sirens sliced through the otherwise placid afternoon, shattering Meadowbrook's suburban tranquility. Neighbors, drawn by Brenda Hayes's frantic shouting, began to emerge from their homes, clutching garden hoses or peering from behind lace curtains. 2 patrol cars, their lights flashing a stark red and blue against the leafy green of the trees, screeched to a halt in front of Sam Green's house. Out stepped Officer Jenkins, young and eager, already drawing his sidearm, his face a grim mask of immediate suspicion, and behind him, a calmer, more seasoned figure, Sergeant Davis, a black man in his mid-50s, his expression one of weary experience. Brenda, still clutching her phone, practically sprinted towards the officers, her face a contorted mask of righteous indignation. There he is!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Sam, who stood calmly on his porch, his hands visibly empty. "He's a hacker, a spy. He was putting up some kind of device on his roof, trying to steal our Wi-Fi, monitor our data. He's dangerous, I tell you." She rattled off a string of increasingly wild accusations, her voice cracking with manufactured panic. Officer Jenkins, fueled by Brenda's histrionics, immediately leveled a stern gaze at Sam. "Sir, step away from the equipment. Put your hands where I can see them." Sam, despite the sudden, dramatic escalation, remained remarkably composed. His shoulders, usually relaxed, now held a subtle rigidity, a tension that was almost imperceptible. He slowly lowered his hands from his sides, palms open and empty, a gesture of absolute non-aggression. His voice, when it came, was steady, calm, and imbued with an unnerving clarity. "Good afternoon, officers. I am Samuel Green. There appears to be a grave misunderstanding. I was merely upgrading my personal home Wi-Fi system. These are my own, legally purchased networking devices." He spoke with an articulate precision that immediately set him apart from Brenda's chaotic outburst. He gestured towards the router and the small antenna on his porch roof, attempting to offer a logical explanation. But Brenda, fueled by her own prejudice and the presence of law enforcement, simply cut him off. "Don't listen to him, officers. He's too smooth. He's trying to trick you. They always do." Officer Jenkins, still focused on Brenda's frantic claims, began to approach Sam's equipment, his movements brusque. "We'll be taking a look at these, sir," he stated, reaching for the router with a heavy hand. "Looks like some kind of black box setup." Sam, however, intervened with a swift, almost imperceptible gesture, a hand moving not to block, but to gently guide Jenkins's wrist away from a particular component. "Officer, if you please." Sam's voice remained calm, but there was an underlying current of authority. "Do be careful with the encrypted optical port right there. It's quite sensitive, and improper handling could corrupt the entire module." Officer Jenkins paused, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Encrypted optical port?" he muttered, clearly baffled. The term, highly technical and specific, flew right over his head, but it didn't fly over Sergeant Davis's. The older officer, who had been observing the scene with quiet intensity, felt a prickle of recognition. The phrase, the confident yet subtle correction, the way Sam had instantly identified a delicate component without even looking directly at it, these were not the actions of a common hacker or a bewildered civilian. Davis's eyes narrowed, his gaze sharpening on Sam, a silent assessment taking place. He had seen that kind of detached, almost academic precision before, in very different contexts. "Sir, can you tell us your profession?" Officer Jenkins asked, pulling out his notepad, still trying to make sense of the situation. Sam hesitated for just a fraction of a second. His eyes briefly flickered to the strange digital watch on his wrist, which emitted a tiny, almost inaudible hum. "I'm an independent technology consultant," he replied, his voice even, though his hand unconsciously pressed lightly against the obscure symbol on his watch. He kept his answer vague, adhering to a long-held habit of discretion. Davis noted the subtle gesture, the faint hum, and the unblinking steadiness of Sam's gaze. "Independent consultant, huh?" Brenda scoffed, stepping closer. "Means he doesn't have a real job. He's probably got a whole network of these devices. Check his ID, officers. He probably has a fake one." She continued her relentless accusations, her voice a relentless torrent of prejudice and suspicion. Sergeant Davis, ignoring Brenda, stepped forward, his presence calming the volatile air. "Mr. Green," he said, his voice deep and measured. "We'll need to see some identification, please. Just standard procedure." Sam reached into his wallet, extracting his driver's license. As he handed it over, a small, worn, laminated card, slightly thicker than a credit card, slipped partially out from behind it. It bore a faded, almost indistinguishable logo and a single, unadorned title, Senior Advisor. No name, no department, just that enigmatic phrase. Sam quickly tucked it back, but not before Davis's sharp eyes caught a glimpse. A flicker of something. Recognition? Puzzlement? Crossed the sergeant's face. Officer Jenkins, oblivious, merely scanned the driver's license, his suspicion unwavering. The senior officer, Sergeant Davis, the helper character, was now actively working through a mental puzzle. Sam's unwavering calm, his precise technical language, the unusual device, the subtle mannerisms, and that glimpse of the mysterious ID card. It all painted a picture that starkly contradicted Brenda's frantic accusations. This was no ordinary man. Brenda, the antagonist, Type A, meanwhile emboldened by the police presence, continued to escalate her verbal assault. "He's dangerous, officers. He's too calm. That's how they get you. He's definitely hiding something. You need to arrest him right now." Her demands grew louder, more insistent, forcing the situation to a head. The air crackled with the opposing forces of Brenda's escalating paranoia and Sam's unwavering, almost unnerving composure. The quiet new neighbor, Sam Green, had been pushed into a spotlight he desperately tried to avoid, and the stage for a far greater revelation was set. The flash of police lights painted the quiet suburban street in stark, unsettling hues. The immediate aftermath of Brenda Hayes's frantic 911 call was a surreal tableau. Sam Green, calm and collected, standing on his porch, surrounded by the stern, professional presence of the police, while a growing crowd of curious, whispering neighbors gathered on their lawns. Officer Jenkins, still convinced by Brenda's histrionics, moved to take Sam into custody. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to come down to the precinct for further questioning. This equipment, your explanation, it's all highly irregular." He reached for Sam's arm, his grip firm. Sergeant Davis, however, intercepted him with a subtle, yet authoritative gesture. He looked at Sam, a silent communication passing between them. "Mr. Green," Davis stated, his voice even, "it's for everyone's benefit that we clarify this situation. Just a trip to the station to sort out the ID and these devices. No need for force, right?" It was an invitation, not an order, but the implication was clear. Compliance was the best path forward. Sam simply nodded, his face unreadable. He had been in situations far more perilous, faced far greater threats than a misunderstanding with local law enforcement. He knew the drill. Resisting would only escalate the situation unnecessarily. As Sam was led towards the patrol car, the small front yard, his sanctuary just moments before, transformed into a makeshift arena. Every step he took was observed, every nuance of his demeanor scrutinized. Neighbors who had only ever seen him quietly tending his garden or politely greeting them now watched with a mix of suspicion, curiosity, and a few fleeting glances of pity. Whispers followed him. "Did you hear what Brenda said? He seemed so normal. What if he really is doing something shady?" The silent judgments were palpable, emphasizing the chilling solitude of the hero. Sam was completely alone, facing the collective doubt of his new community, his reputation hanging precariously in the balance. Sergeant Davis, walking just behind him, occasionally met his gaze, a silent acknowledgement of the unusual circumstances, while Officer Jenkins maintained a rigid, suspicious posture, convinced they had a genuine culprit on their hands. The brief drive to the Meadowbrook Police Department was a blur of flashing lights and hushed radio chatter. Once inside the stark, fluorescent-lit precinct, the pressure on Sam intensified. He was led to a small, windowless interrogation room, the air thick with the stale scent of disinfectant and old coffee. Officer Jenkins began the questioning, his tone sharp and accusatory. He focused on the ambiguity of Sam's independent technology consultant role, the custom Wi-Fi equipment, and Brenda's insistent claims. Why so many special parts, Mr. Green? What exactly is an encrypted optical port? Are you working with anyone else? Who are your clients? Each question was a barbed wire, designed to snag inconsistencies, to expose a lie. Meanwhile, Sergeant Davis, though present, was conspicuously quiet during Jenkins's interrogation. He wasn't relying solely on direct questioning. Instead, he excused himself periodically, retreating to a small office. There, he made a series of increasingly urgent phone calls. He started with basic background checks, which yielded frustratingly little beyond publicly available mundane information. Then, he tried running Sam's name through more specialized, restricted databases, fueled by a nagging instinct about the senior advisor card and Sam's unnerving calm. He cross-referenced the obscure term encrypted optical port with high-level tech forms and obscure government documents, hitting dead ends. The time limit was unspoken but understood. They couldn't hold Sam indefinitely without concrete evidence. Every minute that passed without a clear explanation amplified the tension. Back in the interrogation room, the questioning became more pointed. Officer Jenkins, frustrated by Sam's continued composure and lack of confession, decided to play a card. "Look, Mr. Green," he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "We know people like you. You come into quiet neighborhoods, set up shop, and then disappear. What exactly are you trying to hide?" He gestured vaguely at the table, implying something sinister. "What's in your past that you're so desperate to keep secret?" Sam met his gaze, his face impassive. He knew this tactic. He'd seen it used 1,000 times, both as a target and as an observer. The pressure was building, a subtle, psychological squeeze. Brenda's insistent calls were coming in, demanding updates, threatening to go to the mayor. The media, alerted by Brenda's dramatic 911 call, had begun to gather outside the precinct, their cameras flashing like predatory eyes. The story was rapidly escalating from a neighborhood dispute to a potential media circus. This mounting external pressure, combined with the slow, difficult process of verifying Sam's identity, created the ultimate test. Sam had chosen a life of quiet anonymity precisely to avoid such scrutiny. Now, his carefully constructed world was under siege, and the very act of proving his innocence threatened to unravel the deep cover he had maintained for years. The ticking clock on his freedom, the growing public perception of him as a suspect, and the insistent prodding from Officer Jenkins formed a suffocating gauntlet. Sam knew he couldn't hold out much longer without revealing more than he wished. He could feel the weight of his past pressing down on him, the distinct possibility that his efforts to blend in, to simply be normal, were about to spectacularly fail. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of the impending breach in his carefully guarded existence. The revelation was no longer a choice, but an inevitability, forced upon him by a nosy neighbor and a misunderstanding of epic proportions. The Meadowbrook Police Department precinct, typically a place of mundane paperwork and hushed inquiries, was a hive of frantic activity. Sergeant Davis, his face etched with a mix of exhaustion and dawning awe, was on the phone, his voice hushed but urgent. "Yes, sir, I understand. The credentials match. Unbelievable." He slammed the receiver down, running a hand over his tired eyes. The pieces of the puzzle, painstakingly gathered through late-night database searches and highly restricted inquiries, had finally clicked into place. Officer Jenkins, meanwhile, continued his fruitless questioning of Sam Green, growing increasingly frustrated by the man's unyielding composure and lack of confession. The local news vans, tipped off by Brenda Hayes' dramatic 911 call, had already converged outside, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like hungry mechanical birds. The story of the suspicious black man and the heroic neighborhood watch president was rapidly spiraling into a media frenzy. Just as Jenkins was about to launch into another accusatory volley, the door to the interrogation room burst open. Police Chief Thompson, a grizzled veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor, strode in, his face grim. Behind him stood a man in a sharp, dark suit, his presence exuding an almost unsettling authority. He carried a slim, silver briefcase. Thompson ignored Jenkins's bewildered look, his gaze fixed on Sam. "Mr. Green," the chief began, his voice surprisingly deferential, "we've just received confirmation regarding your identity and your unique capabilities." He nodded to the man in the suit, who stepped forward. "This is Director Hayes from the Office of Advanced Cyber Operations." Director Hayes, a man whose eyes seemed to miss nothing, offered a curt nod to Sam, then turned to Chief Thompson. "Chief," he said, his voice quiet but commanding, "we need to clear the air, immediately and publicly." Within minutes, the precinct's small conference room was filled to capacity. Local reporters jostled for position, microphones thrust forward. Brenda Hayes, having been summoned to witness justice, sat in the front row, a smug, triumphant smirk plastered on her face, occasionally whispering to a local news reporter about her heroic vigilance. She was ready for her moment of vindication, fully expecting to see Sam Green paraded out in handcuffs. Chief Thompson stepped to the podium, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. "Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, citizens of Meadowbrook," he began. "We have an update regarding the incident involving Mr. Samuel Green and Ms. Brenda Hayes' 911 call." Brenda preened. "While we appreciate citizen vigilance," the chief continued, his eyes briefly flicking to Brenda, "it's imperative that we clarify the facts. What Ms. Hayes reported as suspicious activity and hacking was, in fact, Mr. Green engaged in a highly complex personal security upgrade for his home network." A ripple of confusion went through the room. Then, Director Hayes stepped forward, the silver briefcase clicking open with a soft snick. He pulled out a laminated card, identical to the one Sergeant Davis had glimpsed. "This is Mr. Samuel Green's official identification," Director Hayes announced, his voice carrying surprising weight. The card was projected onto a large screen behind him. It bore no name, no photo, only a fingerprint scan and the stark title, Black Ops Cybernetic Lead, Tier 1. A gasp rippled through the room. "Mr. Green," Director Hayes continued, his gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, "is not merely an independent technology consultant. He is, in fact, a highly decorated, retired cybersecurity expert from a specialized, top-secret division within a U.S. government intelligence agency. For 2 decades, Mr. Green served as one of our nation's foremost digital defenders, responsible for designing impenetrable networks, disrupting hostile cyber warfare operations, and neutralizing global terror cells' communication infrastructure. His Wi-Fi upgrade was him installing a custom, quantum-encrypted module, a device literally years ahead of commercial technology, to protect his personal data and ensure the privacy of his charitable work." He clicked a button on a remote, and images flashed across the screen. Sam, in a crisp military uniform, receiving a medal from a grim-faced general. Sam, hunched over a bank of glowing servers, his face illuminated by the data stream. A blurred image of Sam shaking hands with a high-ranking government official. "Mr. Green's suspicious equipment," Director Hayes added, holding up a forensic image of the small, unassuming antenna Sam had placed on his roof, was a proprietary adaptive frequency antenna, designed to maintain a secure, untraceable connection for his personal philanthropic project, creating secure, encrypted communication channels for humanitarian aid organizations operating in conflict zones. He was literally ensuring that life-saving information could get through without being intercepted by hostile forces. The room was utterly silent, the previous murmurs replaced by a collective, stunned disbelief. All eyes, which had been fixed on the screen, slowly swiveled to Sam. He stood quietly in the background, his expression unchanged, a man who had faced down digital armies and now merely weathered the storm of public revelation. Brenda Hayes in the front row sat frozen. Her jaw had dropped, her face pale, slowly turning from smug triumph to absolute, horrifying realization. Her eyes darted from the screen to Director Hayes to Chief Thompson, and finally, to Sam. The suspicious black man she had called 911 on was not a hacker, but a national hero, a silent guardian of global security. The truth, stark and undeniable, crashed down on her. This was the breathless moment. The revelation that the man accused of petty hacking was a covert cyber savior, a ghost in the machine who had protected millions from unseen threats, left everyone speechless. A reporter's microphone clattered to the floor, unheard. Then a single thunderous clap broke the silence, followed by another and another, until the entire room erupted in a standing ovation. Reporters rushed forward, no longer seeking gossip, but genuine answers. Brenda, completely overwhelmed, felt the weight of every eye, every condemning gaze. Her face crumpled, tears of sheer mortification streaming down her cheeks. She tried to rise, to escape, but the crowd was too dense, too intent on celebrating Sam. Sergeant Davis, a quiet smile on his face, walked over to Sam, offering a firm handshake. "Mr. Green," he said, his voice thick with admiration. "It is an honor, sir. You have our deepest apologies." Brenda, utterly defeated, could only sit there, a monument to her own prejudice, as the community's outrage turned squarely on her. Her moment of anticipated vindication had become her public, undeniable, and soul-crushing humiliation. The fallout from the precinct press conference hit Meadowbrook like a digital tsunami. The video clips of Director Hayes' stunning revelations, juxtaposed with Brenda Hayes' mortified expression, went viral. Locally, the story of the Karen calls 911 on cyberhero became an instant legend. Brenda, once the self-proclaimed moral compass of the neighborhood, was instantly and utterly ostracized. Her phone, once buzzing with calls from eager gossipers, fell silent. Neighbors averted their eyes when she passed, the subtle greetings replaced by pointed silences. The meticulously manicured lawn she prided herself on began to show neglect, a visual metaphor for her shattered reputation. The few remaining members of the neighborhood association voted her out unanimously, her reign ending not with a whimper, but with the resounding clamor of public shame. There were even whispers of a class-action lawsuit for harassment and defamation, initiated by some of the very neighbors she had tried to rally against Sam. Brenda's downfall was swift and commensurate with her villainy, a stark reminder that prejudice and baseless accusations carry a heavy price in the court of public opinion. She quickly became a recluse, rarely leaving her house, a prisoner in the very community she had sought to control. Meanwhile, for Sam Green, the atmosphere was entirely transformed. The suspicion that had once clouded his interactions in Meadowbrook evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming wave of admiration and heartfelt apologies. The local news, having initially sensationalized Brenda's claims, now scrambled to correct their narrative, painting Sam as a quiet, unassuming hero. The police chief himself visited Sam's home, offering a profound personal apology for the misunderstanding and the ordeal. Gifts of homemade pies, fruit baskets, and heartfelt apology letters began to arrive at his doorstep from neighbors who had previously given him wary glances. Michael, the young boy Sam had helped, approached him with wide-eyed reverence, bringing him a hand-drawn card that read, "Thank you for being a real superhero." The community, having learned a harsh lesson, embraced Sam not just as a neighbor, but as a pillar of integrity and quiet strength. The sudden unveiling of his past also brought a deluge of new opportunities for Sam, albeit ones he approached with cautious optimism. High-profile cybersecurity firms contacted him, offering exorbitant salaries and corner offices. Several top-tier universities extended invitations to lecture or even lead new research divisions in cyber warfare. Even government agencies, recognizing the inadvertent breach of his cover, quietly reached out, suggesting high-level consulting roles that would allow him to continue his vital work. Sam, however, remained true to his core desire for a simpler, impactful life. He politely declined most of the grander offers, recognizing they would plunge him back into the very spotlight and high-stress environment he had left behind. Instead, he accepted a unique proposition from Chief Thompson and Sergeant Davis, a part-time pro bono role as a senior cybersecurity advisor to the Meadowbrook Police Department. This allowed him to use his formidable skills to enhance local law enforcement's digital defenses, train officers in cyber awareness, and assist in investigations, all while maintaining a relatively low profile. It was a role that offered purpose without the glare of constant public scrutiny, a perfect balance of contribution and quiet existence. He also agreed to consult on a limited basis for the humanitarian aid organization he had been assisting, ensuring their secure communications remained operational. This was his new beginning, a genuine second chance to integrate his extraordinary capabilities with the quiet life he truly desired, fulfilling his mission on his own terms. One balmy evening, Sam sat on his newly cleaned porch, the custom Wi-Fi antenna discreetly humming on the roof. Sergeant Davis, off-duty and in plain clothes, joined him, a silent acknowledgement of their newfound bond. "You know, Mr. Green," Davis began, his voice thoughtful, "when you were in that interrogation room, so calm, so unbothered, I knew there was more to you. But I never imagined this." Sam took a slow sip of his iced tea, the cicadas providing a gentle evening chorus. "I just wanted peace, Sergeant. After years of living in the shadows, fighting battles no one knew about, watching for threats that never slept, I just wanted to grow roses and read books, to be a normal neighbor." He gestured vaguely at the meticulously kept lawn. "The irony isn't lost on me that trying to secure my home network, something so utterly mundane, ended up blowing my cover wide open." A faint, wry smile touched his lips. Davis nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Sometimes, Mr. Green, the most ordinary acts can have the most extraordinary consequences, and sometimes the world just needs to know who its quiet heroes are, even if those heroes prefer to remain unseen." Sam looked out at the tranquil street, where children were still playing, their laughter drifting on the evening breeze. He realized that perhaps true peace wasn't found in complete anonymity, but in using his abilities to safeguard the very tranquility he cherished, even if it meant stepping into the light from time to time. This contemplative dialogue solidified Sam's journey, his reasons for retreat, and his newfound acceptance of his purpose, finding meaning in a quiet heroism that was now understood and appreciated. He was no longer just Samuel Green, the new neighbor. He was a guardian, a teacher, and a living testament to the power of hidden strength and quiet dignity. 1 year later, Meadowbrook was no longer just a quiet suburban town for Samuel Green. It was truly home. The faint scent of blooming roses from his meticulously tended garden mingled with the crisp autumn air as he jogged through the neighborhood, now greeted by warm smiles and friendly waves from passing cars. The whispers had long since faded, replaced by genuine respect. The man once deemed suspicious was now a beloved, if still somewhat enigmatic fixture in the community. His days were a harmonious blend of the peace he craved and the purpose he couldn't deny. He still enjoyed quiet evenings with a book, but now he often taught an evening class at the local community center, his voice, once reserved, confidently explaining the intricacies of cybersecurity to a rapt audience of concerned parents and eager teenagers. Sam had truly embraced his second spring, a period of profound personal and communal flourishing. He had taken his unique past and forged it into a powerful force for good within Meadowbrook. He established the Digital Guardians Initiative, a nonprofit program offering free cybersecurity literacy and basic digital self-defense workshops for the community's most vulnerable members. From teaching seniors how to identify phishing scams to guiding local small business owners on securing their online assets, Sam's expertise, once used for national security, now diligently protected his neighbors. He personally designed user-friendly curricula and even secured small grants for low-income families to access secure internet connections and basic antivirus software. He didn't seek public accolades, often deflecting praise with a humble smile, emphasizing that digital security was a collective responsibility. He saw himself not as a hero, but as a knowledgeable neighbor, diligently paying it forward, transforming his past trials into pathways of empowerment for others. Michael, the young boy Sam had helped that fateful day in the cafeteria, had blossomed under Sam's quiet mentorship. Now a confident junior in high school, Michael was an integral part of the Digital Guardians Initiative. He meticulously organized workshop materials, managed the program's burgeoning social media presence, and even assisted Sam in teaching basic modules to younger children, his voice clear and enthusiastic. Their bond had deepened into one of genuine friendship and mutual respect. Michael often spoke about Sam as his silent mentor, someone who had taught him not just about computers, but about integrity, resilience, and the power of quiet strength. He was a living testament to Sam's profound impact, a small seed of kindness that had grown into a thriving tree of purpose. One crisp Saturday morning, the Meadowbrook Community Center buzzed with activity. Sam stood at the front of a crowded hall, a projector screen behind him displaying a vibrant graphic about online privacy. His once hidden dragon tattoo was now subtly visible on his wrist as he gestured, a silent testament to the journey he had undertaken. His eyes, once guarded, now held a serene light, reflecting a deep sense of fulfillment. He was concluding a workshop, his voice a calm, reassuring presence. "Remember," he advised, "the strongest defense isn't always the most complicated. It's about awareness, about knowing who you are, and about protecting what truly matters." As the audience dispersed, offering thanks and warm handshakes, Sam's gaze drifted to a newly mounted plaque near the entrance, dedicated to community volunteers. Among the smiling faces of local organizers and school principals, a candid photograph stood out. It was a shot of Samuel Green himself, taken during a Digital Guardians session. He was leaning over a bewildered senior, patiently explaining a complex cybersecurity concept, a faint, genuine smile gracing his lips. His posture was relaxed, yet powerful, embodying both approachability and profound capability. This was the final symbolic image, portraying not merely a man who had weathered a storm of prejudice, but a legend fully returned, integrated, and embraced. The black man changing his own Wi-Fi, once misunderstood, was now the community's quiet guardian, his past as a brutal fighter in the cyber realm transformed into a legacy of protection and empowerment. His second spring had indeed arrived, vibrant and full of purpose, proving that true heroism often thrives not in the spotlight of battle, but in the quiet, steady dedication to serving others. If this story stirred your heart and reminded you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this narrative with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming stories that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.